and then she disappeared.
And the guy's just standing on the street in some small town on the Ukrainian border in Belarus.
Yes.
Down probably, I'm guessing he's lost $1,500 maybe approximately from this scam.
One man that we met after such situation, he said that he already, by the moment when she disappeared, he gave her up to $5,000, including the ring.
SAR Experience.
Привет из Minsk. Welcome back to another Vodka Vodcast with me, Connor Klein. Today I'm with Galina Pinchuk. How should I say that?
Galina Pinchuk.
Okay, Galina Pinchuk, lady from Belarus, marriage agency. In today's video, we're going to be discussing the differences between Belarus and Ukraine when looking for a wife. I made a video probably about a month or two back where I actually made one another podcast. I'll link that below in the description to the video, and also up in a card where I actually discussed why there are no scammer dating or marriage agencies here in Belarus. And the same day, Galina actually happened to write me a message. So we've met up now in Minsk, and we're going to be diving into more depth in this second video. So we're going to start off. I don't have vodka today, but Galina and the staff here, they did give me some Shampanskaya. So chin chin. I need to keep buying more vodka. I need a vodka sponsor. That's a new vodka. So, Galina, what would you say are the main differences when guys come to look for a wife in Ukraine and Belarus in terms of the experience? Because you have a lot. How many years have you been working here in Belarus in this business?
My husband established the agency in 1998, so it's already 21 years. That the agency functions here, and I joined him in 2004. So my experience 16 years this year. Why to prefer Belarus instead of Ukraine? Because it's the easiest way to escape from scam.
Exactly. Because my channel, I have a lot of information about scammers, in particular from Ukraine. Not only in Ukraine, I made a video, I'll link that, of course, below in the description, also up in the card as well now, where I go into the depth about, scammers are everywhere in Ukraine, Russia, and sometimes in Belarus, but it's a lot less here. So why is that, Galina? Why is there so little scamming in Belarus compared to Ukraine and even Russia?
There are several reasons why there are less scam. First of all, is because of marriage agency license. So here in Belarus, we have different attitude to the laws, and the laws, they really work. And in 2005, it was a rule that obliged all the marriage agencies to get marriage agency license, and it's not a thing that is easily to get. So all the underground or kitchen maid agencies were closed immediately because you couldn't work without a license. The agencies that tried to work without the license, they were closed immediately by military.
By the military, by the government. This is the same thing in Belarus.
Actually, yes.
I have two questions. How many licenses are there actually in Belarus?
At the moment, there are 9 valid licenses in Belarus, but only 3 or 4 marriage agencies actually function.
Okay, so if you were to go online, you're only going to come across just a couple of them, basically, in the entire country.
Yes, and of course you will find some websites that claim that they work in Belarus, but they have no official office here in Minsk, and that means that officially they cannot organize you anything.
Okay, and so where are those based? Are they based in neighboring countries, or?
Yes, there are some, I don't know, maybe Canadian websites or something from Europe, from United States. There are some sites that claim that they work with Belarus, but in reality they have only few ladies on the website, and they are not the agency that functions here, because to work here in Belarus you need to have a license.
Okay, and as I say in many of my videos, Belarus is a rule of law. Well, there is rule of law in Belarus as opposed to Ukraine, which is very chaotic. There's a very poor rule of law tradition since independence in 1991. That basically means if you have a problem in Belarus, you can go to the police, you can go to the courts, and you can get it resolved. In Ukraine, that's extremely difficult to do, even after the revolution of Maidan, which has improved things considerably with terms to with respect to law enforcement. There's less corruption with the police and whatnot, and since they reformed that. But still, it's very hard in Ukraine to go and actually do something if you have a real problem, like you get scammed and someone rips you off. It's very, very hard. But in Belarus, the police take everything very seriously. I also made another video about the time that my phone went missing after I'd gone to the airport and actually left Belarus, and the police took it really like a real crime, and they actually tracked down my phone and found it within a few hours for me. They went through everything, the CCTV, they wanted to speak to everybody I'd met in the previous 24 hours, basically determined to make sure that no one had gotten away with a crime, and that's a very big difference between Belarus and I think almost anywhere else in Europe, to be honest. So to be blunt about it. So if you have a problem here, like before we started rolling the camera today, you told me actually about a time that you had to help someone who did have an issue here in Belarus. Can you tell a little bit more about that?
We had, so I could say that there are not so many scam in Belarus, and the scammer ladies, they do not work all together. So as I know, in Odessa, they work like all together, the scam ladies, the scam restaurants, and scam agencies. Here it's not possible, because if you find the menu with two prices somewhere in the restaurant, it's immediately you can call the police, and there will be huge problems with this restaurant. That's for sure, that's work immediately here.
It's interesting because I'll just cut across you. In Odessa, there was recently in a situation where someone filmed this happening, where they had the two menus in the two different languages with completely different prices, and they confronted the management. There was a huge scuffle, everything, and they posted on social media, and so many people. It caused a big scandal in Odessa. But I went back 2 months later, and the restaurant's still there. So not much happened. In Belarus,
it's vice versa. They can close the restaurant that very day if they find two menus for two different with two different prices. And here we face very seldom the situations with scammers, and if we met something like that, we try to help foreign people to find them, maybe. So here in Minsk, if you get scammed, you can easily go to police. You can easily show what you have, what the documents, and as far as I know, these cases are prosecuted. Several years ago, we have a chain of cases, very one alike to each other. I think it was the same group. As I told you, the situation was like that. So the man got acquainted with a lady on some international website. Then there were no red flags in the communication, so she said, "Come to Minsk, I will be glad to meet you here." And she said, "So come to the airport, I will meet you here." If I look at the photo of this man and the letters of the lady, I could understand right away that it was the scam, because it was always a big age difference, like 30 years, and the difference also in the looks. So I could understand that this lady could no way be interested in that man.
So but definitely the big flag was the difference, like we talk about sometimes on my channel when I do interviews, that you can have a large age gap, but you cannot be unrealistic and crazy to think if you cannot meet decent-looking women in your hometown that suddenly Miss Belarus is waiting for you here in Minsk at the airport. That's not realistic, right? You can have a significant age gap, but once you go over like 15, 20 years, then you need to be careful that it's not going to be a scam. And if you get to 30 years and it's someone on the internet. So this was not a Belarusian dating site or agency. It was actually an international.
It was international dating site where they can easily exchange the contacts and have the direct communication. But for the man, it's very difficult to understand that he is in not the league the lady is in. So they got the letters full of love, full of patience, and of course they were so happy and immediately in love. And there were no other red flags. So these ladies were not asking for money. They were not asking for anything but come to Belarus, I will meet you. The other red flag that only I could see, it was that all these cities where the lady lived in were very small cities on the very border. And
Border with where? Which country?
With Ukraine.
Okay.
So there were several very little cities, and I have big experience. I have seen so many thousands and thousands of women profile, and looking at the photo, I can estimate in which city it is made, by what photographer it is made. And when I saw these photos, I could realize that they could never be made in these small cities.
I suspect that they picked the border with Ukraine to be able to leave the country, because obviously, as I've already said, getting a prosecution in Ukraine or tracking someone else is going to be very hard as opposed to Belarus. So if you obviously live on the border and you're Ukrainian, then...
So what happened next? So the guy came here with a plane in Minsk, and there were no other way to reach the city because there were no train connection. Here in Belarus we have very good train connection, and only few cities are not reachable where you have take the bus or minibus to go there. So these cities were like that, so you cannot just Google the train and go there. So the man arrived here, the lady was waiting for him in the taxi at the airport. And of course the guy was very happy because he saw the real lady that he was communicating with, and she came with him for the taxi. So the first red flag was when they arrived to that city, and the taxi turned out to be like $500.
$500 just one way?
Direction, yes.
One direction.
Yes.
Hold on a sec. So, just to put this in perspective, the taxi out to the airport, which takes 40 minutes, costs 32 rubles, right? So maybe 30, we'll say. So that's about $15. So in order for it to be how far? I mean, the border with Ukraine is how many hours? 3 hours drive?
Yeah, around 3 hours.
So the real price is about $120, $150 each way, and they wanted $500 each way.
Yes. Yeah, so
but this woman has already come from her town officially. She's already come.
Yeah. So the man usually couldn't say, so I don't want to pay, because he sees the lady, he understands that she has never experienced how to go with the taxi. Maybe she says that she didn't know that it will be so expensive, I don't know. Then she offered him to pay for the apartment or for the hotel, and the prices were like, I don't know, 50 euro per night, 90 euro per night. These prices were normal for Minsk, for a good hotel. But we speak about very small city where there were maybe some rooms for rent for, I don't know, $10, something like that. So the lady put the money in the pocket for taxi, for the apartment. Sometimes even she managed to buy she asked him to buy some food, to buy something, I remember the pillows for the apartment. And then she suddenly said, oh, I want to go to my to friend of mine She has a cat in the house. I have to feed the cat, and then we'll go to your apartment.
This is where? This is already in the small town that she said she lives in, or this is already in Minsk?
Yeah, no, at that town
In
where
that
she
town.
lives in. So on the border of with Ukraine. Yes. And then she disappeared.
She gets out of the taxi?
Yes, she gets out. It was not the same taxi
okay.
that they came from the airport. Usually it was already another car, or they were just staying there, or so different situations. But the issue was that she just went in to the door and then disappeared.
And the guy's just standing on the street
And
in
the
some
guy-
small town on the Ukrainian border in Belarus.
Yes. And
Down probably, I'm guessing he's lost $1,500 maybe approximately from this scam.
So one client, one man that came, that we met after such situation, he said that he already, by the moment when she disappeared, he gave her up to $5,000, including the ring. It was the story because usually this happened to the guys from distant countries like United States, like Australia, Mexico. So usually the guys were from that countries. And you understand, when you fly, you do not sleep well one night before the flight, then you do not sleep during the flight. And when you come to Belarus, actually you are already exhausted, you have jet lag. So he said, I could do not understand anything. So what happened to me? I just decided that if I come here, if she's so as she was in the letters, I'm so open to her, and I just gave her the ring, and that's it. And after that, she disappeared.
Wow, $5,000 gone.
Yeah.
So you helped some of these guys contact the police. What happened after
What
that?
happened next? Actually, here in Minsk, you can find quite a lot of people who speak English. And there in that city, with no internet and the phone, so no Google Translator, nobody speaks English. Nobody in the police speaks English. Of course, people. So usually it takes 1, 2, 3 hours for the man to realize that something happened, that she didn't broke her leg in that building, that she just went
Disappeared,
away.
yeah.
And I think by that moment she already crossed the border with the Ukraine, because all the cities, we put them on the map, and they all were just like 20 kilometers from the border. So different places, different cities. So of course he somehow found people that could help him to take taxi or to take bus to Minsk. How did we know about that situation? Several years ago, it was obligatory to have visa to enter Belarus, and most of these guys, so at least 5 or 6 the guys like that, they asked our agency to make a visa. Of course, because the lady will not give him the private information, the passport, to receive the visa. So they contacted us. They said, I'm already in contact with the lady. I just need the visa from the agency. And that's how we knew about that situation. We knew about 5 or 6 cases. And I think there were thousands of that, because
Well, we can't know if there's thousands or not, but it obviously is a major issue. And then the police, you helped them contact the police, right?
yeah, we helped them to contact the police to translate the case, and in general to help the man to find out, because all of them, of course, they were frustrated, and
And the police, is there anything they can do? This seems like a situation where probably the perpetrators are not Belarusian, probably. They're probably Ukrainians from across the border, and they know if they commit the crime there and then escape, okay, you report it in Belarus, nothing's going to happen on the Ukrainian side, unless they continue to do it and there's a sting operation.
yeah, because in that cities where it happened, nobody have ever seen this person. There were very small cities and nobody have seen these persons. After that, when we got we understood the red flags that could point on that situation. If the guy asked just for visa, our agency, we asked with whom he is communicating, where do they meet, how everything is organized, and we managed to save like 3 guys from that exactly situation.
Wow.
When the lady understood that. No, I think it's not just the lady. I think it's the criminal organization, and the lady is just on the top of this iceberg. When they understood that somebody supports man, when somebody makes him think, makes him sleep at least one night in Minsk to overcome jet lag and to have clear head, then they just disappeared and stopped to communicate anyway.
Okay, so once the probable scammers discovered that he was going to stay overnight in Minsk, maybe travel down to Gomel and then meet her in Gomel, which obviously you cannot ask a $500 taxi fee for. Well, you could, but it's not very far from where the town is where she supposedly lives. Then they just stopped communicating at all. They just stopped the correspondence. So obviously scam, So that's interesting. So this was the main scam that was going on. It was not using a Belarusian marriage agency site or dating site. It's an international one, well, basically a Ukrainian one. And then they were saying that meet the girl in Minsk because she lives in a small town on the border. So you've been warned. If you ever hear that, be very careful. If someone claims to be from a small town on the border with Ukraine, that you need to take a taxi all the way out to their town. There's no train connections, one of those few cities in the entire country. So it's important to point out that we're not saying that all Ukrainian dating sites or marriage agencies are scams per se. I have done 1 or 2 collaborations with some agencies that actually you're familiar with as well. And they work perfectly fine, but it's just that if you were to Google marriage agency or dating site Odessa Mama, you're going to see, I remember when I did this before, there were like over 100 of them, and the vast majority of those, if you start to look at how they make money, it's very clear that it's highly likely to be a scam site, right?
Yeah, of course.
So maybe you could explain a little bit about what's the difference between how marriage agencies or dating sites or matchmaking brokers make money in Belarus versus what happens with scammers. We're not talking about the bad ones. I'm going to actually link the good ones that I've already done some collaborations with below their videos in the description as well.
I can explain in that way. For example, if now in Belarus there are 3 or 4 agencies working, we can work on our terms. We are almost monopolist here. I mean that we have lots of the ladies at our database. It's more than 1,000 ladies. There is not so much competition, and we can afford ourselves to work honestly. So when I came to the agency, I understood that I don't want to work with so-called models, so very beautiful ladies that we should wait for them 3-4 hours to come to the meetings. And I said, if you are interested to get acquainted with the foreign man, please come to the agency. We make the meeting here at the agency. We'll see how the chemistry works between you. And then if you like each other, okay, just exchange the contacts and keep on the communication. And that was really the best decision, because now we have the best rate, so we have at the moment more than 1,300 couples created by the agency. And according to our industry, it's the huge rate. I do not know any agency that have created more couples than we do. And I think that's the reason is that we put being honest into the base of the process. We can afford ourselves to be honest because there are only few agencies here in Belarus. And
so this is interesting for me, just one thing, because I used to be a competition lawyer, right? So normally we're very pro competition, have as many, get rid of oligopolies or monopolies, because then it gives you more choice, of course, in terms of options. But this is very interesting as a counter argument that because the competitive nature of marriage agencies, and how does that work in Ukraine? Why the reason are they so dishonest? Not just because they can get away with it, but
yes. For example, how it works in Ukraine. For example, I have somehow in Ukraine, for example, there are almost 1,000 of agencies. I think this is close to be true, but nobody can count them because most of them are like, I have 10 girlfriends, let's be a marriage agency.
yeah.
I will make money out of you.
Because you don't need a license, so that's the first thing. So you can just set one up tomorrow with a website.
Yeah, so you can set it up immediately and start to get money. But if you want to attract somebody, you need to make good photos, better photos, the best photos. And then it comes to extreme photoshopping when you will never recognize the lady. So for example, we can afford ourselves to accept the photos that the lady brings by herself to the agency. I can afford myself to say, your photos are not good, go to change the photos, or I will close your profile. And I can say to the lady, your photos are too good, too photoshopped.
Yep.
You cannot be recognizable. And of course I do that because the meetings takes place here in the office, and they see the real lady, how she comes to the meeting, and it's important for me that she looks like the how she is on the website.
And this is a problem in general with like Instagram and every Photoshop and whatnot. Even now there's filters for the videos, so actually seeing what the girl or woman looks like in reality is often misrepresented, of course, on all social media and in particular on dating sites. So if you see something that's extremely photoshopped, you basically tell them, listen, send me a realistic photo.
So I can imagine why the Ukrainian agencies, they have to pay to the ladies, because if one agency starts to pay to the lady to go to every meeting organized, then the other agency also has nothing to do but to pay to the ladies to come to the meetings, and the lady can select. This agency pays me like 10 euro per meeting, this agency pays me like 20 euro per meeting, and she can select the right agency.
So these are scammer.
Yeah, I'm speaking about this scammer, how they why it is so in Ukraine. I cannot say that Ukrainian girls are bad. No, they are not. But the all situation, all extreme competition between the agencies, it leads to that. And even, for example, when here in Minsk, I communicated with decent agencies, the best agencies in Ukraine. I understood that in comparison to us, they are already scammers.
Yeah.
So that's the difference between how Belarusian agencies act and how Ukrainian agencies act. That's why it's I can tell, come to Belarus, because it's easier to find an honest agency than to come to Ukraine, and then you will see 1,000 agencies, and it's almost impossible to find the right ones.
Exactly. If you have to filter through, this is sometimes the disadvantage of having a lot of choice. Right? We talk about communism versus capitalism, and communism you had two options, whilst in capitalism you have maybe 1,000. But the problem is then you have to figure out which is the best of the 1,000, right? It complicates your life a lot. And obviously if you don't have in particular a recommendation for someone to direct you towards the couple of honest agencies in Ukraine, then very likely you're going to end up in a scammer agency.
Yeah.
And especially if you're being naive, that you go with the Photoshop photos and everything seems too good to be true, and you get there was one company that asked me to sign up. They wanted to collaborate, and I said, okay, set up a profile for me. I got literally hundreds, because they left on the automatic email notification for every message by default when they created my profile. So my profile had no photos. It just had what they assumed was my age, and that's it, my first name. And I got hundreds of email notifications within one day. My whole inbox was jammed with. I was like, obviously no one wrote me a real email of interest based on my first name and my presumed age. I mean, obviously the whole thing is a scam, right? So I can empathize with guys that if you have to be sensible about these things. If you get a long message to someone who's just looked at your profile, it's not realistic. So these are red flags to watch out for. So basically, the situation in Ukraine is very well. Basically, you can get away with being a scammer agency. Nothing really happens if you scam someone, right? And I actually noticed that on some of these sites now, they actually put, because I'm a lawyer, I looked at the terms and conditions, and actually in the terms and conditions, it basically says you are aware that this might not be real. They phrased it in some way that basically said, you know that this could possibly be a scam. So they even try to cover themselves in the terms and conditions of the site because some of them are actually also registered outside of Ukraine, so they're probably worried about litigation in the US. But they even write in the terms and conditions, this is a scam. And you click that when you sign up. So that's absolutely crazy, right? So that's the situation. So the first thing in Ukraine, you can basically get away with being dishonest. That's the first big difference. And the second one, that's both on the agency side and the girls who participate as scammers. Mm-hmm. And then the second one is actually the competitive pressure in Ukraine. If you try to run an honest agency, you use real photos, you don't pay some wannabe models to show up for the $20 every meeting to make money out of it, then basically you won't get any clients because the competition, guys are visual, we're visual. So we see, boom, pretty girl, and then you have the honest agency and they have maybe ordinary photos of women, and then they just don't go to those agencies because it's not attractive.
Honest agency, they cannot survive in Ukraine. It's very, very, very difficult.
Exactly, it's very hard. If you're going to be honest in Ukraine in that competitive environment, where the first issue there is, of course, that the scammer agents get away with it. If they didn't get away with it, then they would be closed down like they were in Belarus about 20 years ago, right? It's actually over 20 years ago.
No, it was 2005.
15 years ago, the government closed down the scammer sites here. And then you see what happens. Then you're left with a few honest ones. You're left with a few honest agencies. So that's interesting. I think that's a pretty good summary for you about why Belarus is the better country if you're going to take this option of using a marriage agency. Of course, as I said, I did some previous collaborations with honest agencies in Ukraine, even though they were pretty hard to find. And I normally receive some sort of solicitation from a very dodgy scammer website or agency from Ukraine, like at least every few weeks, if not every week. Which obviously I love opening up the website or asking them direct question, how do you monetize, how do you make money? And they're like, yeah, we charge subscription. And so basically it always comes down to we charge to communicate, and then boom, I don't need to talk to these people anymore. It's obviously a scam straight away. As I said, I'm going to link down below the previous videos I did with the couple of honest, the rare gems of honest sites in Ukraine. Also, I'm going to put a link to Galina's website down below in the description. Lady from Belarus, just go and click on it there and you can go and check out their site. And I don't know, is there anything else to say? I'm actually going to go for the weekend to Viptipsk. Have you got any tips? So if you're going to see a travel life from Viptipsk, if I actually get on the train tomorrow and go and check it out, it's a city in the east of Belarus, close to the Russian border, that Mark Chagall, the famous artist, is
on the north of Belarus, no?
Well, it's north, northeast. So I'm going to go do that. Спасибо большое. And
it was nice to see you in Minsk.
Yes, finally. Because as I said at the top of the video, Galina actually wrote to me, really, when I was about to go and film that vlog.
And guess how old are you?
You did? Do you want to say it in camera? She doesn't want it because I guessed also how old she is. So we'll keep that a secret. So,
yeah.
Za Belarus.
SAR Experience.